we have a food truck?
We moved one from June to July. So at the end of July.
Oh, wow. My wife thought she saw something.
Community center, maybe.
Sorry, yeah, they have their.
Okay.
How's that been?
I have not been to that one. I've seen pictures. It looks like they have 4 or 5.
Yeah, they put them on like that front half
In
of
the parking lot?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's, I have not attended.
I have not attended either, but I've driven past as they were setting up and getting it ready, so. the only reason why.
No, Christy said she's not able to make it today, and Kim is not able to make it. So I think we're just waiting on.
It's gonna come remote.
Couple minutes late, yeah.
Yes.
So
Take two.
got some time.
There's that.
Summer ones. Like how well have the council meetings been attended?
Good.
Have you had any council meetings live?
We had one, the most recent one, there was probably 4 or 5 people here. That's for a public hearing, but other than that, I mean, that was the first time in months that we've actually had people.
Was the first one,
Yeah.
okay.
Of course, you know, put all the chairs here, and what's the first thing they do? They all sit together.
The social distance
Yeah.
chair sign did nothing to deter them. Supposed to they all work together. They came together. They're like,
So when we get Clinton, we got a quorum, then, right?
3.
So, yeah, then we'll be good.
That's how we try every room in City Hall.
Yep. So, yeah, that room, I guess, you can't do the video conferencing. Now I know.
now you know.
The room we were in, we can't do video conference?
The tower room we can, but it was a little bit too small for everyone for social distancing.
Oh, okay.
So then we moved it to
I got
this
you.
room,
I got you.
but that one we can't do.
James?
Morning, Ken. Listen how exciting this is. I get to sit up with the new,
You got my chair and everything?
I got yours, oh, I'm sorry, here. Good switch.
A little bit different from the.
Yeah, so where do you go from that side then? Is that 1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just called you. Ignore it.
It was, McDonald's is now slow food, isn't it? It's not fast food.
It's a sign.
Hey, what are the odds freaking flocking geese walking across the street and holding?
Oh, yeah,
traffic?
they were.
What is
they
it
were
with
not-
those guys?
They were there when I came up, maybe they were going back to the pond now.
They're going in front of that white truck that parks in front of.
Got it.
Oh. What are the guys that are parking over by the post office? Is it really?
Outside of residential. You said. Not for
Get
now.
trucks, find a place to
Kristen, do you have
park.
an extra copy of the?
I do.
We're not gonna be your parking lot.
Anyone?
Say.
Anyway,
Small yacht that also likes. to-
Morning, Sarah.
Morning. Well, how are you?
Just waiting on Clint, otherwise this will be a real short meeting.
Kim's gone, right?
Yep, Kim, I believe, is camping.
Yeah.
And
joining right now. Right.
All right.
Hello, this is Clint.
Morning, Clint.
Clint.
Morning, sorry I'm late. Are we ready to begin?
I believe we are.
yep,
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and call to order the July 13th Tourism Commission meeting. Attendance and roll call will be done via meeting minutes. We have in front of you the May 11th and June 8th minutes. Are there any questions or concerns, or otherwise we're looking for a motion to pass?
Ritzel motion to approve the May 11th minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
All right.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Ritzel
Straight on to
motion- What, we got another one here. Ritzel motion to approve the June 8th minutes.
Second.
all in favor?
All right.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll go to new business, discussion on updated 2020 community event calendar.
I guess I can kick that discussion off. This is Andrew Clint. So where to begin? The month of May, when we were sorting out our back to business plan, our reopening plan for the community, we had a long council debate on generally the reopening plan, the phasing, as well as that was the same evening as the July 4th fireworks and parade. And although we canceled the parade and the fireworks regarding the reopening of the community, it was pretty clear to the staff that at least a majority of the council members were not intending for us to cancel summer. I think that was loud and clear. And that was the present state of affairs then. Fast forward to probably almost 4 weeks ago, Kristen. I met with Kristen Doug and our assistant administrator, comptroller Bridget Souffrant. And we were looking at the summer events through a financial lens as the COVID situation had stabilized, if not had improved a bit for a while there. And we told Kristen to, given the finances, despite the fact that room taxes are going to be where they're going to be this year, which is de minimis compared to previous years. But also the fact she put together, to put on these events, the remaining events that we had on the slate for 2020, it was about $50,000 or $60,000. So we thought that from a financial lens, we could definitely pull off, maybe with a small loan or advance from the Community Development Fund, another fund in the city. We could have these events and have some semblance of normalcy for our residents and people visiting our community for the summer. The discussion today, we can talk about a lot of the events moving forward, but I think the discussion today, one of the things we wanted to ask the commission is regarding specifically dog days. And do any of the commissioners harbor any strong feelings one way or another about continuing to go forward with dog days, which is 2 weeks away, or not going forward with dog days? And a couple discrepancies, I think, or differences that make us think about dog days a little bit differently is, if you guys have been to dog days in the past, it is a very dense event. You can barely see a blade of grass in town square. There's a lot of vendors. We can talk about how, if any, downsizing there's been of those vendors or anything like that, but it is probably one of our most dense events. And even and coupling that, this year we are co-locating the farmers market that day too. In years past, we've canceled the farmer's market for that day, so adding to the density. Even the best laid plans that we have, and we'll talk through some of that as well. I mean, obviously we have guidance from our own health department and other health authorities on ways to do these events. But I think that even the best laid plans require a lot of individual responsibility and responsibility among the vendors, of course, too. Dog Days is also a little bit unique in that, you know, Kristen kind of, you know, we host the event, but we don't necessarily dictate every aspect of it like we do our other events, like a family movie night or a beer gardens, where, you know, we can honor, maybe to a greater degree, honor the safety plan that we will put in place, you know, moving tables farther apart, et cetera, et cetera. So we wanted to get a read. We will be talking about this tomorrow at our emergency operations committee meeting with our public health folks, as well as some other management staff here in the city. And we just wanted to get some input from the commission on any feelings one way or another on immediately Dog Days. And I think we're going to have this kind of thing as this situation, the COVID situation, kind of evolves, good, bad, or indifferent. We're going to have to kind of take this on a step-by-step basis this summer. I think our goal still is to try to have Dog Days, to try to have all of these events. But obviously the situation the past 3 to 4 weeks since we had our meeting with Kristen and Doug and Bridget, obviously has not improved. It's degraded pretty significantly. So not looking necessarily for a decision from the Tourism Commission on Dog Days specifically, but I think that's the immediate concern or immediate decision point for the city. And we just wanted to get some input from you specifically on that event, and then we can talk a little bit more about the remaining events for the rest of the year. Fair?
Fair enough. I don't have a pooch, but so I've not attended Dog Days. However, I'm sure those that do have them would like to see it go forward. A couple of factors that I think about. I think there's going to be a natural culling of the crowd because those who are concerned about, the issues going on today are not going to show up. So you might have not as dense as you normally would have.
I would go to the vendors, I think, too. Some vendors may not be there that would another year, so that's a good point. Yep.
Right. It is outdoors, which, is certainly in its favor. If our goal is not to cancel summer, which I think is a good goal, I would go for it. I would go forward and let the people make their choice as to whether or not they want to attend.
And this is Clint. I agree with basically 100% what Jim's saying. I think as long as the Oak Creek Health Department and whatever guidelines you have and you discuss tomorrow, as long as those can feasibly be put in place during the event, I think we should move forward. And like Jim said, I think that people that are more nervous about the situation will stay home.
Kristen, do we know this event in Oak Creek is?
Good.
Working? Or working? This event in Oak Creek is not a one-off. These people do this.
Yep,
around.
This is an annual event. Yep, and
I know it's annual here, but they do this other places.
yes,
Have
and
they
their
done
other
any?
events are not canceled at this time. So they have it in Kenosha, here, Grafton, and a few other cities too.
Okay, have they discussed with you what they're doing? Are they doing anything different for those events to make them happen, relatively speaking?
Have they had one of those events maybe yet?
This weekend would be their first one, so I can definitely touch base with them and see how they're handling that a little bit differently. So I'm sure they're spacing things out a little bit more.
Interesting to see what their attendance is.
We obviously have a sunk cost with them already, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We had a deposit of $500 at the beginning of the year, and then we owe them $2,000 before the event for the pool and the
Do
competition.
you owe them anything after that, or?
No, that'll be it.
Okay, so no matter what, we're paying $2,500, right?
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be inclined to proceed kind of pending feedback from the Kenosha event.
Yeah, maybe I can attend the event this weekend just to get a scope.
Oh,
and
it's
see what
coming
like.
up.
This weekend.
Yeah,
yeah.
This coming weekend, okay.
Yep.
Sorry. And that'd be the first of the season for them?
Yes.
All right. And they're inclined to move forward themselves, the whatever board or committee or individuals
Yeah, I had a phone conversation with them and they would like to move forward if we're able to.
with the both 2-day event?
Yep. Friday and Saturday.
All right. Well, I guess you don't have to come, right? If you don't want to, but yeah.
That's maybe just to add a few things. And I love Dog Days. It's my absolute favorite event. I mean, we put it together, the first year. And so from that perspective, it would really pain me to see that canceled. But that being said, I think that when you say that there's going to be some natural, people are going to make choices as to whether or not to go there. But I think that being the only game in town, and it's a big town in the middle of July, I think and if we have good weather, I think we're apt to see some pretty large crowds there. Again, and then not making any representations as to, the personal responsibility of those being there, but it's likely to be very well attended. Much like Lions Fest would have been, much like our, 4th of July celebration would have been. So, I mean, it's just, we're in a real odd position in that. I mean, obviously, we don't want to cancel summer. We want to have opportunities for people to recreate responsibly. But then when you see the numbers and you see how other events have been responding to that, similar size events, we just wanted to make sure we have an open and honest conversation with everyone involved. So we know moving forward what the risks are, what the preparations are, and how that optically affects the other decisions down the road.
So the same people that are going to stay home are going to be vehement about our decision to hold the event. So we're caught from a PR standpoint, we're caught both ways if we go forward, if we don't.
I.e., we cancel the 4th of July, but we can have Dog Days.
Yeah. And this is a large draw. I think Doug's pointing to the regional nature of this. It's not again, I take a look at the other events we do, like a family movie night. We can very much maintain the integrity of the safety plan we put in place. It's a more local event. People aren't going to travel from wherever to probably come to our movie night, but all things that are all factors we've discussed this morning are going to kind of enter into this decision. But I hear you guys loud and clear that you think we should make it as safe as possible. And
Well, I think,
Still hold the event.
we certainly can exert some influence over, Kristen, I think we can give Kristen the authority to, if she finds whatever they're doing, probably not in keeping with kind of at least some thoughtful protocol. But,
I think that's a good point, though. I think your vendor list, even though you've got a list right now, if you checked in with them, I think you'd find that a lot of them would probably opt out. And if we, given our diagram, and I know we've been pretty full the last few years, and if we need to make the decision that we're only going to allow half the vendors this year, and we have to figure out an equitable way of making that decision so we can maintain appropriate distancing. That's another option, I guess.
And I don't know if I agree that people that don't have dogs, for example, might show up just because it's a ongoing event. It's an event that they can go to it. I think it's going to be relegated to dog owners, and we'll see. But if the goal is not to cancel summer, like I said before, having an outdoor event, It's a pretty tough one. I wouldn't have been in favor of 4th of July either, because, you know, a certain segment of the 4th of July people, at least when they had it at East, were all compartmentalized in at various homes. So there was of course the viewing area that we had, and you could have either canceled that area and let people view from other places. But regardless, I think if you're going to try not to cancel summer, this is a good opportunity to not do it.
Maybe ask Kristen just real briefly, what besides the general guidance, right? The generic mass gathering guidance that's in the packet. Have we done anything acute to Drexel Town Square? Here's what I'm thinking, generally speaking. I mean, if we need to close 6th Street and
Clock Tower,
Market, the two north-south roads, if we need to maybe close those roads down and bump out the vendors, have we looked at that? We didn't have an opportunity at the end of last week to talk about the operational plan, which we will obviously today and tomorrow leading into the EOC meeting. But if we could, you know, I think the biggest thing is spacing out a little more. And if we need to do road closures on those streets we don't like to do that, of course, but in a rare situation like this, we could get
One or the
our
other.
public safety folks behind that somehow. Well, they'll get behind it. I'll pull in a trump card there. We could do that if that's not in the works. Maybe that, you know, anything to alleviate, turning over all the stones that we can on the operational plan to make it a little more safe.
yeah, for instance, I don't think we'd set up the bleachers.
I don't think we are we?
We did not rent them yet, so we can just keep it off if we're planning that, yeah. And we do have, I want to say, half the vendors signed up for the event than there normally are. So we usually have 50 vendors. We do have 25, but then we are combining it with the farmer's market. So the plan is to have one side of the street, the produce vendors, and then the other side of the street would be the pool and then the dog vendors, but we can spread them out a little more.
Farmers market's done at when is the farmers market?
The farmer's market's done at 1:00, but I believe Dawn is giving vendors the option to stay later because the event goes until 4. So I'm guessing a lot of those vendors will take the opportunity if attendance is a little more than it usually is.
If we could operate this like, if you've been to the farmer's market this year, it's really being done efficiently and safely. But when we add our farmer's market vendors with the dog day vendors, we run out of real estate real quick, right? So I think, how can we, again, pick back up some real estate, maybe getting into the street or something like that?
I haven't been able to be at this thing since the first year because it just overlapped with our vacation schedule. So
Dog days?
yeah. Is there a lot of standing around or people mingling or moving or generally speaking through this event? Other than the diving competition, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't characterize
The dogs like to socialize a lot.
They
So,
say.
you know, you have that.
My
They're
dog
not there alone. They
He's
didn't drive
scrapping,
themselves.
not socializing. So anyway,
I mean, it was pretty packed, and it can get pretty packed. And
There live music planned for this event? Or is it a DJ?
No.
Or just
they've
music?
got it's just pre-recorded stuff.
Okay.
so the Saturday evening does not have a music event with it.
It does not. Pure Pups with their competition, they'll play music like in between
Okay,
rounds.
I thought maybe
but,
they had a band for Saturday night.
last year we
Friday
did
night.
on Friday, but depending on the situation
Okay.
too, I wouldn't want people
Yeah.
standing close together listening to the music too. So I also have to take that into consideration.
yeah.
But we can definitely talk about it.
Clint, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, does anybody else on the call here on the Zoom have any input that could help the conversation just as we head into the EOC tomorrow? Thinking that from what I've heard, we'll talk about it as a staff, but really just looking at the operational plan to try to enhance that a bit and continue the event is perhaps the goal here. So we'll see what the public safety folks think tomorrow, but I guess if anybody else has any input on that.
What's the policy? What's the policy on masks?
We have no city policy, Corey, right now on masks.
Okay.
For the public health plan, they are encouraged from the vendors, but they are not mandated.
think does Dawn ask her vendors to have them, or
Yes. I think she required the vendors to have them.
appliance is good?
Yes. I've been there probably 2 or 3 times.
Leslie, your microphone is not on. We cannot hear you.
There you go. Well, oh, no.
I used to be pretty good at reading lips, but it's not working.
1 second.
There you go.
There, we can hear you now.
I have my headphones here. Okay, so the only difference that I would say between how the farmer's market is set up and how Dog Days is set up is that the farmer's market is encouraging people to go get their stuff and leave. There's no hanging around. So Dog Days is a completely different ball game in that regard because you are hanging around, you're watching the pure pups, you're strolling around the vendor. So to compare them is a little bit erroneous, I guess, because it's apples and oranges. So keep that in mind. The farmer's market is working great, and it's, you know, it's lovely. People are getting what they need and then leaving. So there's very few children. There's not, you know, they're encouraging like one person from the family or 2 people to go get their food and scat. So it's a little bit different. I think with Dog Days, there's going to be people that are going to hang out for several hours, you know, crowding around the pool and, you know, visiting the vendors. So just keep that in mind as well.
Has the city received any feedback, negative feedback from some people for the farmer's market regarding, oh, you should make everybody wear masks? You know, you're probably gonna have some of that, or have you not received any of that feedback?
On social media, a little bit.
More like, oh, you can have this, but you can't have the 4th of July. I think that's been
Yeah.
the thing that I've seen. But other than that, I haven't seen anything about masks.
Okay.
If you cancel Dog Days, people will say, well, you can have a farmer's market, but you can't have dog days.
Yeah,
It's a no-win situation.
it is, yeah.
Right.
Well, we got what we needed specific to Dog Days, I think, for input, so I appreciate that. I don't know, Kristen, if you wanted to take the rest of the events, and I think you're just looking at giving the overview, right? And again, I think financially, despite the fact that, you know, room taxes are where they, you know, will be where they will be by the end of this year, with a small fund balance carried over from previous years, as well as, you know, potential lift from, you know, another fund for the city, we can comfortably take these events on for the year. So we're good there. The question isn't going to be moving forward, it's should. So with that.
Yeah, so I think the overall plan is just to check in with the health department. We have monthly meetings now, just on the current situation and the guidelines for the different events. The events that we had planned for June, we pushed back to August and September. So now we're looking at running the events in late summer and fall this year. So as close as we can get without being too cold outside.
Okay.
The first beer garden is late August.
Yes, we did have that scheduled during the DNC, but because that did get pushed back, we ended up pushing the beer garden back as well, and that one will take place in Drexel Town Square.
So I'm assuming that we'll have very similar discussions about each event on a micro level. Given some of the anecdotal evidence that we've heard about beer gardens and other situations, it's been tough to control. It really has been. And especially, you know, Drexel Town Square is pretty good size, but it's, you know, it's not huge, and it's, you know, operationally, I think we'll just need to pay really close attention to how we set those up and if we decide to have those events.
I have seen some talk of reserved time slots for beer gardens. So you'd be from like 1 to 3 would be your family's little circle, and you would camp right there in that spot for that period of time. So I don't know if that's something you might consider. And then you'd have the next slot from 3 to 5, that's 2 hours, and the next slot from 5 to 7, and that's your reserved circle or picnic table for that period of time.
Yeah, that's interesting. We could definitely look at that. And I know Milwaukee County too, I believe they don't have the pint glasses. They only do the plastic cups for this year. So that's something we'll probably have to change too.
New cup every refill or whatever.
Yep.
I'm going to be there from 1 to 9.
We're gonna sign
Maybe
up
you
for
can
4
reserve
slots.
several time slots.
Alias, AKA.
Lincoln.
All right, so moving on to presentation of tourism marketing plan.
Corey and Matt, did you want to take this one or start off?
Sure. We have a deck to go through. We can go through it pretty quickly too. Matt's going to share it. Obviously, the plan for marketing has changed dramatically. You'll see that throughout the presentation too. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll talk a little bit about media budget, but we're looking at right now, I think I shared with Kristen this morning too, we're still getting data back from a couple of media vendors, but the conversation you just had also depicts what the media spend is going to be. If an event doesn't happen, the allocated money that we had towards that event won't be spent. So right now we're looking between a 65, 70 media spend. At the best case scenario, that will only go down because I doubt we're adding events in terms of media spending. And then Kristen and I have also been working with our media vendors for those that don't let people out of contracts, rolling it over to the following year. So we're trying to cut where we can and also make sure that we have reserves to make sure that the events do get the attendance. But there's also that little algorithm of how many people do we actually want there, because we seem to be really good at getting a lot of people to go. So we're going to try to send a follow-up email to this commission in terms of the exact of where we're at. Vendors have been a little slow on getting us that information. So Matt's going to walk you through what we did, where we pivoted, and what's working. So take away, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. So walking through, we just wanted to start off by kind of recapping the year. So our goals when we started the year, so starting 2020, was driving attendance for the Oak Creek events and celebrations, capitalizing on the DNC event happening. We wanted to see if we could catch some of that business that was going to be coming into the greater Milwaukee area there. And then, as always, building brand awareness by engaging the community through our events and through our social channels. So with that in mind, starting 2020, we really jumped into the event support and marketing for our first couple of events, which were Winterfest and the Dayton Skate in Drexel Town Square. So really working closely with Kristen on the event ideation, the event branding collateral, the social media advertising to drive people to those events. And then we did do some radio ads for both the Dayton Skate, but more so for the radio scripts, heavily focused on the Winterfest event. So with that, jumping into the social media advertising that we did. So really, so far this year, we've only done 2 events that we've put dollars behind for social media advertising, those being the Dayton Skate and Winterfest. So for Drexel Town Square Dayton Skate, we put $40 behind it. We ended up getting really good impressions, 22,000 for just $40, which is fantastic. And then for Winterfest, we put more dollars behind it, got close to 100,000 impressions, 40,000 reach. And as far as the ad response, 477 responses, which are things like comments. But we wanted to throw in there too, we also ended up boosting the Facebook events and had 500 RSVPs on the Facebook event specifically. So starting off the year, things were going great. So then COVID came in, and so our marketing goals kind of changed. So if you think back to those goals we just presented, we basically lost the events at the time, and we lost the DNC event. So our main goal became building brand awareness, and really more so if you look at the next part of it, engaging the community. So with that, Doug and Kristen and everyone who was able to come up with the Thank You Card initiative. It was a fantastic program that we helped to not only think through, but also come up with the messaging, come up with the different collateral pieces for asking the businesses to participate, and then the gift cards to actually be sent out. And then we promoted it on social media, which we are, in talking to Kristen, kind of slowly pulling that off of social media, and we're going to use the remaining cards that we have for giveaways at some of these events. But from what we've heard, really good response. Organic social media. So this is where we put a lot of our focus on during the initial COVID times, just because there wasn't a lot of events happening. So I'll go through the stats just overall for what we've done in 2020 and then COVID, and then I'll share a couple notes. So overall stats, this is through June 30th. We just wanted to point that out. So our followers are up 5.45%. Impressions and engagements were down, and engagement rates was up tremendously, 322%. So then looking at the COVID time period, so again, we adjusted, knew we weren't having events in the near future, so we switched kind of our paths and our tactics. So from March 25th through June 30th, again, followers were up, engagement and impressions were down, but the engagement rate was up tremendously again. So now getting into those keynotes that we were talking about. So the dip in impressions and engagements were tied specifically to events being canceled / postponed. So typically in a year, we have several events that are really kicking off in spring and summer. And with those not happening, we weren't running any social media ads to drive people to our channels. So we lost out on all of that audience that we were buying. Again, thinking about just Winterfest alone, we put money behind it and got almost 100,000 impressions. So if you lose that much, that many events and that many impressions from advertising, it's down to be down. And then engagements, that can be anything from likes, comments, reshares, but one of the big things is clicks. And our link clicks were down about 78% versus last year, which if you don't have events that you're trying to drive people to the event page for, there's naturally going to be a decrease in engagements and link clicks. So the positive note is, if you look at the numbers, we're still going up in followers and they're more engaged than ever. So even though we don't have events, our audience, we're really finding out what they engage with, what they want to see, and they're engaging with us more than they ever have, which is, especially during this COVID time period, exciting to see. And then for a platform heavily focused on event promotion, as we've been talking about, we have discovered how much more Oak Creek really has to offer, which I'll touch on in our learnings and our next steps. So where we're really going to focus on is promoting positivity. This is something that we talked with Kristen a lot as we were adjusting our focus, was sharing positive news stories, the thank you card initiative, just anything we can during these crazy times. People are looking for positive stories to take their mind off of things. So we're going to continue looking for those. Focus on Oak Creek as a destination. So this is a huge one. And where I wanted to go back is, as we had less events to focus on and to promote, we had to adjust and figure out what were we going to be sharing. And so we focused on some of those positive stories, but we found out that specifically the scenery does really well with our audience. And it kind of opened our eyes up to, we knew how great the parks were, but people are really responding to seeing the scenery, and whether it was just because it reminded them that there are other things they can go out and do in Oak Creek, or whether it is just the fact that you guys have beautiful scenery. People really responded to it and engaged with it, and specifically scenery with animals. We always joke with Kristen that one of our best posts of the year was literally a reshared post of turtles that did astonishingly well. So then emphasis on the remaining events. So everything that we're just talking about now is, if Dog Days does happen, what we wanted to do is now bring in one of those goals, which was driving people to the events. But as Corey mentioned, it will consistently be an ongoing conversation where we decide how much we want to promote it, because how many people do we want to drive to the events? But it is something that we can pull back in and put a heavy focus around. So that was a very, very quick run through of how the year has gone and kind of a quick glimpse into where we're going. So Corey, not sure if you have anything else you want to share based off of that.
If you're thinking about it from a regional standpoint, you guys have been the most proactive community in terms of pushing positivity, pushing organic social media. A lot of others have shut down in terms of just doing anything. So commend Kristen, and we've been having regular scheduled meetings with her, just trying to figure out ways to stay relevant, holding all the work that we need to do to promote events. So with every community, it's just been completely interesting, especially with the way that the fund is funded. But yeah, just give a shout out to Kristen on really just continuously trying to find ways to stay in front of the audience. And every community is down in terms of total traffic because there's just not a lot of events to promote. So I'd say that in terms of how happy we should be as happy as we can be in just trying times. So any questions for anybody?
I've got a quick question. Matt, on the engagement rates, where we're
Yep.
7.1% up, what are the raw figures, the numerator and denominator for that? Do you know?
So it would basically be engagements per post. So if you think about it, it would be taking however many posts we have however many engagements we have overall divided by the total amount of posts that we have. So engagements are anything from, like I said, likes, shares, retweet, or not, we don't retweet, but comments, link clicks. So I could get you more information on that, but it's basically however many times people engage divided by the amount of posts.
And I was just looking for the raw numbers that make that up.
Yeah, we can get that to you, Jim, too. We do it through our software we use that the city's on is Sprout. So we can produce pretty much any report that you want to. And there is a narrative or key to what each of those are. So I can send that to you, no problem.
Maybe a suggestion for purposes of our meetings, maybe in the future, when you're throwing up percentages, just put in brackets or something what the raw numbers are. So, how percentages can be very misleading.
Yeah.
Corey and Matt, or Kristen as well, what's your thinking on the level of promotion for dog days?
I would take dog days and put it in its own island. Just dog people are dog people, for one. And two, we've never really had a hard time getting people to go to this event. They have a kind of their own following as well. I'd say we probably want to put half the power on it because I think it was Doug that said it too. The concern is, and Leslie too, is this is a completely different event than everything else in that everybody just kind of stands around and dogs kind of interact and socialize with each other. So if you're going to do it, let people know that it's happening. I am a firm believer in people are making their own decisions on whether or not they'll go somewhere. So I do think that we'll probably get a little bit less of a crowd, which is not a bad thing either. So we'll probably do not as heavy as we've had in the past, but we definitely want to put some positivity out there, and pets are positive. So
that's a marketing plan that is outside the city borders, right, as well?
Yep. Yeah. From a social standpoint, we do it regionally. I think it's the 5 surrounding communities. It's all done on mileage reach. So we just won't put as much frequency on it, Ken, as we normally do.
Right. And that'd be one thing I guess you could alter if you wanted to make it a smaller, more controlled event. You could alter that a bit, I guess.
Yeah, you can slow it down live as is.
I also wanted to add something too about the DNC advertising. So at the beginning of the year, we did purchase some airport advertising during that week to promote Oak Creek, but Savage was able to cancel that and get our money back for that purchase. So we're going to be allocating those funds toward events and other things. So just because it won't be as big as anticipated. So we thought we'd use those funds for something a little bit different.
Matt and Corey.
Buy the Savage Boys and girls a beer at the beer garden, right?
It's absolutely interesting to see what media partners are giving refunds and what aren't. It is literally changing the mentality of how media partners, if you want to call them partners, get value moving forward. Clear Channel was great. They went all the way up the ladder because that inventory was super expensive after we had purchased it. And then also a big kudos to the TMJ companies are doing really well as giving refunds, but it is a negotiation of all negotiations of, well, if you don't do that, how about you do this? And if you don't do that, how about you do this? It's like, we just kind of want our money back. So it pays to have really good relationships with your media partners is what I'm finding out.
For sure. Okay. Informational and discussion items, Tourism Commission budget.
So we talked about this actually, the first agenda item, but I just wanted to give an update because not as many people are staying in hotels. Our budget is going to look a little bit different for this year. I don't have the exact numbers for this quarter, but I can share that when I do. And the pot that we had saved from previous years, we're actually almost through that with the events that we had for this year. So what Andrew mentioned earlier is that if we do go over budget this year, we'd look to borrow from community development, and then we would pay that back next year when people are staying in hotels a little bit more. So that is the plan currently, but I can share those exact numbers with you too.
Kristen, when do we evaluate budget for the Tourism Commission?
Similar time frame.
All-ish?
Yeah. Probably
So
September,
we may
late
have
September.
a hard reset on thinking for next year.
And we won't get the second quarter numbers until probably August 1st.
Because we got to get above the general fund nut before Tourism Commission gets anything.
And I think
right?
we did just an internal analysis. I think we should be fine there. But not much
We'll see
more than
something,
that.
but certainly not the revenue we saw last year.
Right, so we have a $457,000 retention of the general fund, and everything above and beyond that serves as the Tourism Commission budget. I know we're,
Not everything, but
Yeah.
for the most part, with the exception of in tax increment districts. Is that what you were saying?
there's some, no.
Staff costs,
Yeah.
et cetera. Okay. We think we're going to cover that. I mean, obviously things could change, if the third quarter repeats the second quarter, then we have to have a real hard conversation, but we have some time on that, I think. But we should be able to cover that general fund portion of that and then have some to carry on these events. But like we were talking about with all of the event, operating the events is $50,000 on the conservative side to get through the rest of the year, but we have marketing and salaries and those kind of things too. So that's where, as a buffer, we were thinking we could borrow from community development for a year and pay that back.
How about if
So we didn't cancel summer.
how about having a more in-depth review of budget next meeting? So that way,
Do we have any numbers?
Well, I think that'll turn on the second quarter.
well, I'm suggesting we maybe make it into two parts, the current and then planning. So
Sure, yeah.
August, current, September, October, whenever.
Yeah, I mean, we should have the second quarter numbers in. Not that it's going to paint a really good picture, but it's data. Yeah.
No, that's what we need, some data.
Clint, how you guys, what's your occupancy rate lately?
I'd say we're down about 65%. Terrible.
Budget.
And every event disappearing keeps making it worse. We're pretty much going to just remove our DNC blocks entirely, which was 90 to 95% of all of our inventories.
And you feel comfortable that that's industry wide or at least regional wide in terms of your occupancy?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, we were lucky at the Comfort Suites. We had a very large group that was in-house for 3 months, which was actually March, April. Well, actually, we had them in March, April, May, and June, and now they're gone. So that for instance,
Is that the white truck crowd?
yes. So their business is concluded. So that's going to drop that hotel's occupancy down even more. So I actually think that overall, it's gonna show worse than the second quarter. I think the third quarter is going to be worse by far.
So you're purely seeing not just transit stays or?
Yeah, business travel is pretty much dried up. We're still seeing some leisure. We're seeing construction crews. We're seeing still sports teams, which is great, playing at the Rock and lacrosse tournaments and things of that nature, youth sports. But business travel, we are not seeing much of anything besides construction projects. And that's our bread and butter, so that's hurting the most.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we can crystallize that. We're going to have to do that internally anyway. So we obviously can share that with you and,
Right.
and be strategic about it, see where we're going to go with this thing.
All right, then at this point, I think we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
Let's motions to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Have a great day, everyone.
Later, Clint. See you, Leslie, Catherine, Matt, Corey.